I'm Michael Jakubiak, founder of ND Action, and I would like to welcome our today's guest, Wayne Bennett. Wayne's got over 30 years experience in recruitment. He's also a director and founder of a recruitment business Made for Tech Global, when he's focused on the technical roles and on diversity. But I will leave it to you to fulfill your introduction. If you can give me a couple of sentences about your experience.
Yeah, so I've been in recruitment since 1995, so this year will be 30 years. Majority of that recruitment has been technology-based, but I have covered some finance in my time and marketing. I think the easiest way to say it, I kind of fall in love with change and connecting people. And luckily for me, I think I found something that I love to do. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's been life-changing for me. And yeah, I think from that, considering I also have the oldest of 10 children, so I also became a role model to them. And we kind of born and raised in Manchester through those times. So as someone kept saying, you know, you've been able to crawl out the barrel and make something for you. It's a mad analogy, but no, it's been definitely a life-changing experience for me, and I hope I've changed other people's lives and affected other people's lives. So it's a big thing for me.
Beautiful. I think that's one of the reasons why we're also here. I think worth to mention that we work with Wayne as well, and Wayne helped us to get a brilliant tech lead to our team. So I'll use this opportunity to advertise your services, because it's a massive help what you did for us. So thank you for this, Wayne.
Oh no. I think I genuinely believed in the platform, and when I because of my own interest and awareness in neurodiversity, what you're trying to do are doing, I had a great fascination with it, and I took a personal interest in trying to find you the best person I could on the market. So it's a pleasure.
Beautiful. Once again, thank you. So what you need to understand, why we even talk today, it's a stories. So what I found out through dealing with neurodivergent individuals, with fellow us, that most of us late diagnosed, especially finding out about what's spicy about our brain through the stories, about how we actually function in a day-to-day life, how it presents itself. And if you want to get diagnosed, what's the route to diagnosis? So what I want to focus today on is always stories I want to focus on. So that's why we're here. So there will be stories, but there will be stories focused about the discovery, how Wayne get to the point that he's discovered he's neurodivergent, what neurodiversity he discovers he's got, and how his process look like in terms of getting diagnosed and getting medicated. So I think this is very important to talk about it, because that's how we reach people, through stories. So Wayne, what's your story? How did you find out?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, like I said, as being the oldest of 10 children and having 6 sisters, I have 2 children myself and 6 grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned the 6 grandchildren because during the pandemic, it was the grandchildren that made me think, let me look at myself. 4 of them are on the scale, either autistic or ADHD. Yeah. And I thought I'd take an online test, and the online test says, you seem to be swinging towards this way. And then I went to see my GP after that. But yeah, it was my grandkids that was I thought, you've got 6 grandkids and 4 on the scale. Why?
The motto, I hear you're another parents this week. I had a conversation about this, and it's like it happens for kids, in your case, grandkids, but it's still, you need to be a parent to get there.
Yeah, and it's really weird because I was already on that journey of awareness through meditation and spiritual books and things like that, just because understanding how the mind and body work before I got the late diagnosis in 2022. So, and that was a whole different ball game. But yeah, that's the reason why I started to look.
So how did you discover that your grandkids, or that was your kids? They discovered their grandkids are neurodivergent first, and then it came to you, or?
Yeah, no, I think it was because, again, this is what's really strange. In the whole of my career up until that point, I wasn't aware of neurodiversity. I wasn't aware of the effects, and there was actually how I am. There was something out there that described it. So when I heard my son and daughter talking about, okay, the children, this one could be this one, you know what I mean? I was like, okay, so if they're 4 out of 6, is there any connection for me? You know what I mean? I've always felt something from my early years, but I could never put it into words. So yeah, the initial test and the questions made me then think, right, I need to go and talk to my GP, but with the evidence of actions. And it's weird because a lot of the things you do, you're not consciously aware you do. It's just habits. But as you say, and you ask your wife, they can tell you everything. But yeah, that was the initial journey. And then, again, it depends on where we're up to from my point of view, because I think I found meditation and breathwork first before getting the diagnosis.
Yeah, so you found coping mechanisms before. But you know what, when I think about, I was start going yoga years before I found out I'm neurodivergent, and it did help. And now when I don't exercise at all, yoga is the one I always do.
Yeah, and
because it helps. And I love the one with the meditation as well.
Yeah, the meditation for me is something that makes me. I don't want to say it slows the day down, but it means I can manage things that come to me rather than me reacting.
You know, I think it's a time for us to stop and actually think, because I think when you're ADHD, it feels like you're constantly on the go. And meditation gives you this time to actually stop for a moment and have a bit of a gratitude or a time, for reflection. What to do next, to not overwork yourself. And if I ask you one question, I will just add to this, that when I discovered my ADHD, I straight away literally diagnosed all of my family. It suddenly all of it made sense. So then you just realize, oh, my mom, or that now I know who I get it from. Then it was from the mom, it went to the nana, and so on. Then we discovered that loads of family has dyslexia as well. So it was like it was
100%. I think very similar. And again, as I said, I've got three brothers and 6 sisters. One passed away last year. But that whole discovery, what actually happened is when I got diagnosed, I actually went backwards. I almost went into denial. But I had some other things that I was dealing with at the same time. But it took me a while before accepting it. And the reason I ended up accepting it, going on the journey of acceptance, was someone who was helping me in a personal matter from a work point of view was dyslexic. Yeah. And she walked in the room and she owned it. And I was like, oh my God, for the last 6 months, I've been denying this. And this lady's come in and seems so powerful, owning it. And from there, I went in the discovery then of, let me understand it, let me work with it and understand it, and then accept it. And
here, and here we are today.
Yeah, and I don't think me and you would have possibly as bonded as well as we are without the understanding and awareness and acceptance.
Yeah, so, you know what it is? It's a neuroda. Yeah. They said there's a gaydar, but also it's a neuroda.
Yes, 100%. And, you know what I mean? As you said, you then start looking at your family in certain ways and you think, oh my God, you are. And you start finding out these other traits and things they've got that you had no idea.
And your friends around you as well. Funny enough, like how we drawn into each other. I'll give to this a bit of a background story. It's 1998, Australia, probably sunny weather. And it's her, Judy Singer. She's the first. She's the first to recognize that each of us is neurologically different. But certain group called neurodivergent significantly differs from the rest of the society. And that includes conditions such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, OCD, Tourette, ADD, so on and so forth. There is loads of them. That's why we're talking. I want to bring us a bit of this awareness. But then add the additional question to Wayne. So to get diagnosed, current average diagnosis process, according to the NHS data, takes 13 hours with a clinician to get diagnosed with one condition. It's a very resource-intensive process. So my research shows that you need multiple appointments with a neuropsychiatrist. You need to involve your friends and family and people from school or your teachers to get diagnosis. That's why it's very resource intensive. That's why also we've got such a long diagnostic queues, because there is only limited amount of neuropsychiatrists and a humongous amount of us with dealing with neurodivergence. Mm-hmm. So my question, Wayne, is how did you came up about your diagnosis and what route did you take? It was a private route or NHS route? How did it look step by step from the moment you've decided I want to do something about it to the moment you got a medication ultimately?
I would, to at least 18 months to 2 years before I got the diagnosis. And initially it was me talking to my GP and I had an argument with him because I didn't know there were certain traits associated with ADHD. So I wanted to admit certain things, but deny other things. So I ended up getting into a verbal confrontation with my GP, who then recommended me to Trafford General, which I then had a kind of another mini assessment where my wife was there. And again, I was aware of potentially 70% of the things. And then the assessor was asking me other things. And my wife goes, oh yeah, he does that. And I was like, oh, right. And then it went from there to them referring me to ADHD 360, who I then had another assessment then for another 2 hours, which my wife was there again, which then became, because this the and then there's ADHD.
Yes.
And I shown traits across the whole parameter.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got the full assessment back, I then had to look at medication.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because of my teenage years and things I overcame, I had this warped view of medication. So I initially said no.
Yeah.
And then when I started my business, so after getting that diagnosis, 2022, April, 6 months of denial, then starting my business at the end of that year, 6 months into starting my business, like, oh my God, I want to give myself the best chance of running this business. So I went in to investigate getting the medication.
Yeah.
And they told me it's going to be 7 years. I was like, what? So it took me 2 years to get to there. And I said no to medication when they were ready to give it me within weeks. But now I've come back a year later and said I want it. 7 years. And that's when I think it was the end of last year, went to the ADHD conference.
Mm-hmm.
And they mentioned about right to choose. I was like, what?
What's the right to choose?
Yes, and
what's the right to choose?
Is that whoever you're with as a GP, you can ask if the waiting list that you're on, which is say 7 years, you can go to another person who's got a contract with the NHS, and if their waiting list is shorter, i.e. 6 months, you can tell your GP that you want to move to that people reassessment. And that's what's happened in my case. I've gone to ADHD, and now I'm just about to get the appointment that after I've done the initial test, what medication I want.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm up to right now. In the meantime, I have picked up.
So it's 4 years ultimately now.
Yes,
yeah. And you still don't have a medication yet?
No, don't have a medication yet. And
4 years.
Yes.
Okay, and so I will interrupt you for a second just to give a bit of a perspective. Imagine you've got a chronic headache. For 4 years, you cannot do anything about it. Imagine that. So that's why loads of ADHD people and a lot of neurodivergent people looking for alternatives. There are loads of different things we can do, from nootropics to ashwagandha, to other stimulants who can help us. For me, it's definitely the mushroom. All the mushrooms coffee works. Definitely they help. So I'm not gonna lie. I decreased my coffee intake from 7 coffees to actually 1, just for the taste now. So you're aware why this is a problem and why we need to talk about the alternatives outside of decreasing the lists. There is this part that we need to wait for a long time for the medication. Not every condition needs to be medicated, but these ones which improve their life of an individual by being medicated, it takes too long time. So that's why we're looking for alternatives. But we also need to understand the current process, hence we're here today.
No problem at all. And I think that's the thing for me, is the reason why. And again, I had this belief that, if I do any kind of medication, it could be addictive. And that's not the case.
I had exactly the same thing, like when I think amphetamines are the medication for the loads of different types of amphetamines. There are medication for ADHD, and I think about that, I feel weird, Yeah. And the mushroom, it seems much more natural,
That was it. I think the nootropics was something that has an effect. But what's happened is my daughter's recently been diagnosed, and with him being diagnosed, and again, she was aware of my diagnosis and my openness and acceptance of it, that we could talk. In fact, it's improved our relationship massively. That, before we had an argument, it might take a week, 2 weeks before we bring it. Now it's like, do we even have arguments? It's like we can talk, and I can hear her side, she can hear my side, but also know that how our brains work. Yeah. So from that point of view, I can't recommend it enough to people who have children to understand themselves, especially if you're going on a journey yourself. Your children seems to understand you're trying to improve, but be aware and understand yourself.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So while we're in this topic, so what did you find as a benefits? From the moment when you compare yourself from before the awareness and after the awareness period, what's the biggest difference you find?
I feel I am not as reactive. And I like to think I'm more respondent. But I also now think I can take a step back and looking at things, and rather than think, okay, that's what I believe and everybody else believes.
Yeah.
The impulsiveness that I had before is now more responding. I now want to understand people more before responding. And as my wife would have said, you now take more time out. You now want to be more understanding, whereas before it was you're very reactive, you're on the go, you've got to be doing something all the time. So yeah, it's that finding that balance that makes you happy. You know, I was very anxious, the potential you could take things the wrong way, and you know, now I'm more grateful and appreciative of life and where I am right now. So I can appreciate life every day, and that's a daily process. And I think there's not enough people, I think a lot of people take for granted where their life is and not appreciate where their life is, and I think that's half the problem. So when life affects you, you're thinking, oh, but I'm not in a good place already. So yeah, that understanding I think has been a massive for me, and I hope people around me see that, and if they see you're trying, I think the good people will help you. So when you do things that are out of the ordinary for them, no worries at all. Whereas people don't know, you're like, what's that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
it's an empathy, you know.
Yeah, it's beautiful when you can see people see it, and
kindness.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to try and where I can pass that on as well.
Beautiful. You know, there is also what you're saying, it's also confirmed in multiple research. So multiple research confirms that even if we don't want to find out about our neurodiversity status, and we do find out, then we can only get benefits out of this. And it doesn't feel straightforward sometimes, but it is when you start about thinking, because you can start putting mechanisms to basically improve your life. Because of neurodivergence doesn't affect you on the day-to-day. It affects your friends, your family, your relationship, the way you work, how you cooperate with your peers as well. So all of this affects it. When you've got awareness that simple as that, we process information alternatively. There's no better definition for this. And we just process information alternatively. And if you truly embrace it, then you can actually start to utilize it as a superpower. I know there's always controversial world, because you know what, we can say superpower. I found it comes with a superpower, but it comes also with the downtown of this, there is a superpower bit, but there is also the pain bit, which you don't see.
Yes.
You know, so I think it's worth to add this.
I mean, I'll give you a perfect story. Possibly about 7 years ago, again, before I knew about neurodiversity, I was assessed for leadership.
Yeah.
And the psychologist pulled me aside after the assessment and goes, I'd love to talk to you outside this. Now, again, I had no idea why this guy who's been doing it for 20 years would want to talk to me outside. And he goes, do you ever feel like you've got superpowers? And I was like, wait.
Actually, yeah.
And I think I may have said this, but it felt like someone had said to Bruce Wayne, are you Batman? Because I you know, for me, I was in an industry and doing something I love to do. So it never felt like hard work graft, because it you know, technology consistently changing, connecting people, meeting people. And I came from, you know, Manchester inner city, where, you know, the role models around there were not positive. So to be in an industry where I get to travel the world, I get to see new companies and meet fantastic people. And
you became a role model.
By default, you know what I mean? But it's weird, because when you look back and thinking, so I was neurodiverse for all that, knowing that sometimes the conversation, you know, now the impulsivity.
Yes.
You know, when someone's talking about something you're passionate, you want to jump in. Now I'm being realized, like, oof. You know what I mean? It's making sure you listen to understand before responding.
Absolutely agree. I had one more question for you, which I asked you just before we came here.
Yes.
So I asked Wayne, please, could you ask your wife, like, what she thought? What's the difference? What were your quirks before and after? What's changed? So what did your wife say?
Well, it was almost two parts. I think what she said is basically, before my diagnosis, I was very impulsive, very reactive, always on the go, couldn't sit still, fidgety. And then once the diagnosis, initially it's like, well, now you've got excuses for everything. But what she did say is that I now take time out. I now want to manage my time. I take breaks. I'm not necessarily working all week. I can switch off, which I never thought I could before. And I never felt inclined. And it, like I said, it's a daily, I continue to work on it. And the meditation, the breath work and exercise, and understanding, you know, like the ADHD 2.0 and Scattered Minds by Government, understanding that the environment and the way you think, you have more control over it than you realize. You know, that amount to go off into rabbit holes of your belief in yourself, only to realize that the thought's not real. It's just an imagination. Take you back and right where you're at now. So, the Eckhart Tolle and Power of Now, knowing how to be present was massive impact on me.
Could you repeat this last bit? I didn't get this last two parts. What you said.
So once I've gone on a journey of understanding and acceptance, being present has a massive impact on your life, because we are naturally overthinkers.
We are,
over this, and you can then have a whole story in your head that goes on for about 5-10 minutes of something that's not real. It's not happened yet, and yet you believe it so much. So the power to be able to say, okay, let go of that thought and just be where you are, that you're in a great environment, you're in a nice home, or you've got a good job, or something like that, just to check out of that overthinking is powerful. And if you can stay as present as much as you can, it allows you, I think, to make up your own story, but live it as you go in. So that's been big for me, and I'll continue to be on that journey, because I think we're on this world to evolve and learn and be better.
Yeah.
And
to add to what you say about the senses, this is a funny thing for me from my what my ADHD and dyslexia does. When I'm tired, or when I'm not fully rested, that's basically, let's put it that way, I'm not fully rested, and I go through any types of environment when I don't have a headphones on, and my brain picks up random words from multiple conversations I'm passing through, put them to my brain, make out of those random words from multiple people a story, into coherent story, put into my brain, and it's running over and over. And it's like, I can't even tell you how many times it gives me anxiety, even though I realize what it is, how it's made. The fact that it's my brain doing this, it's very annoying, and then before I found out I'm ADHD, I didn't know what it is. I literally wasn't able to even name it. It just felt weird. That's why all my life was going with my headphones on, our very, very loud music. Right. And now I understand why was that, So for me, the moment when I discovered that this is just basically a sensory overload, and that's very common for the neurodivergence, it was, nothing's wrong with me. I just process information alternatively, and that's it.
I'm going to add to it, and maybe you could answer the question. I found when I researched things and found out facts based off scientific research, my brain can't wander past that part. So I think it's the unknowing that allows you, in my case, to go beyond reality in a sense and make up things. Whereas once you find out, okay, what meditation is scientifically proven to do, what breath work is scientifically proven to do, I'm able to come back to that place as the building blocks. But to have got to where I am before I got the diagnosis, I had to almost get to ground zero, because the constant work and had to up and go was the burnout.
It is very often associated with neurodivergence as well.
And when I got to that point, luckily my cousin introduced me to meditation, and because that first session when I did the meditation, I was like shocked at how busy my brain was. I was able to build up from there, and then luckily I think Headspace has some great little videos that explain what goes on, and I've just used it, and that's been my building block on. So anytime I go off on a tangent, that's my go-to. And I think that's it, as someone said, your operating system. Know where to go back and on your start.
When something's happening.
And it's unfortunate that most people, to get to that point, to take on meditation, have to get to ground zero. You know what I mean? Because we have this interpretation that, to do meditation, you've got to be sat in crossed legs and, almost Buddha-like. And it's...
Yeah, but what? I think there is also like a lack of understanding of people of this. And also like, when you're masking on your life, I believe that you don't think something's wrong with you. Yeah. What you think is that everyone else is doing exactly the same.
We're here to... Yeah, it looks like we're here to fit in rather than be yourself.
Yes, and this is when you start thinking in a more like a grand scale. Like, we live in a world simply geared for neurotypical people. Nothing's wrong with that. It's just basically that's how it is. A world geared by why mustache men.
I found what was a funny thing, and I couldn't understand it. It's like there are individuals that, because they've known you for so long, it was hard for them to accept that now you're aware of this and how it affects you, because they only see you in a working, successful pattern. They don't know what you're like when you get home. Yeah. So for you to now say, I'm going to start taking care of myself, to them is you slow down. You don't want, as ambitious anymore. And I'm like, so it's the acceptable norm for you is I have to be highly successful and ambitious rather than take care of yourself, which means you last longer. You're not burning out as quickly. Do you know what I mean? But
you can still be ambitious, but you can still be ambitious, but when you do it more smart, you won't burn out after 2 weeks.
That's it. You know what I mean? So I think that's it. I think the term is if they don't see the disability, there is no disability.
Yeah, which is
and
very
that was
damaging.
and that was a hard thing to understand. But I also realized that's other people's interpretation, and they can only, whilst getting to know you, see who you are and how that is. And then I've seen those same people like, okay, I can see what you're doing. I can now understand how it affected you. Yeah. But you have got to understand it yourself first. You know what I mean? So that's the journey.
Simple as that. Yeah. We're coming close to the end, because why is that? Because we're all neurodivergent. Our attention span is not as big, so we need to keep this conversation to maximum half an hour. So
yes,
if you would meant to give like advice first to families, to families with kids, parents, and then to everyone else in terms of neurodiversity, and
it's a couple of things. I'm still learning. My belief is, my kids and my grandkids are your greatest teachers, because they let you know what you're triggered by and what you get upset by. And if you can then work on that, you then become a better person and let go of a lot of, again, my own personal view, baggage in a sense. Do you know what I mean? So that's a great learning tool. But it's hard. It's a daily thing. But I also say, I think kids and people around you neurodiverse, if they know you're genuinely interested in it and they see that, they respond to you. And I think that's it. Ignorance doesn't mean, as you say, that the term we said, because they don't see a disability, there is none. I think understanding allows that person to respond to you in kind, the whole vibration, integration, so that kind of stuff. So I think that's the thing I would say. You learn from the people who are neurodiverse, on if you take a genuine understanding to get to learn. Because I also think it'll help yourself. We think differently, we take in information differently. But that can only help you because you thinking differently and you learning something and you taking a step forward. So it helps everybody the more people try to understand.
So build awareness, basically.
Yes, 100%. And it can only but help you and the individual.
Beautiful. Build awareness. That's my view for this. I will finish with one little text, which I think I'm gonna do in every single podcast, because we've got this buzz about neurodiversity.
Yeah.
Aren't we all a little bit neurodivergent? Aren't we all a little bit gay? No, we're not. So do you really have constantly running thoughts so difficult to switch off? Do you really? Do you really react to every single notification like a meerkat? Do you really? Do you really have 1,001 hobbies? Do you really? Do you really need to think going to the crowded places? Do you really? And if you do, I hope it's sparking enough curiosity to find out what's spicy about your brain. Wayne, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your insights.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much for insight about the diagnostic side, about the right to choose. Remember that. Get into your rabbit hole, find out what's spicy about your brain, and thank you very much for taking this half an hour with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.